The rain fell in heavy sheets outside the small roadside hotel, the kind of place travelers only stopped at when they had nowhere else to go. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old wood and damp carpets, and the dim lobby lights flickered like they were tired too. It was late, and most guests were asleep, but the moment was quiet enough for a person to hear their own regrets whisper back at them. The hotel owner, Robert Pierce, stood behind the counter, half distracted and half exhausted from the long day, when the glass door creaked open. A woman stepped in, soaked through, her clothes clinging to her like sorrow clings to memory. She held the hand of a small boy no older than 7. They looked tired in a way that sleep alone could never fix. When Robert told her the cost of the room, she paused, her eyes filling with the kind of helpless silence that speaks louder than any words. And when the child gently told her, with a trembling smile, that it was okay and he could sleep on the floor so Mommy wouldn't worry, something inside the seasoned hotel owner fractured like thin, brittle ice. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. These stories reach more hearts because of you. The woman's name was Emily Hart. She wasn't always lost and exhausted like this. There was a time she lived in a warm little house with her husband, Daniel, and their son, Caleb. They were not rich, but they were happy in the way people are when love is enough to make small moments feel grand. Daniel worked as a mechanic, always returning with dirt under his nails but laughter in his voice. Emily did part-time tailoring from home, sewing patches, fixing hems, and dreaming of the day she would open her own boutique. Life was not luxurious, but it was stable, it was peaceful. And then, in the way life can change in a blink, it was not. An unexpected accident at the repair shop injured Daniel badly, leaving him unable to work. Medical bills came like waves, and each wave dragged them deeper until they could no longer keep their heads above it. Emily worked harder, longer hours, accepting every sewing job she could find, but pennies cannot fill the space where dollars are required. Their house, once filled with laughter, grew heavy. The cheerful morning sunlight felt dimmer. Still, Emily held her family together as best she could, desperate to protect Caleb from understanding the truth, how close they were to losing everything. When Daniel passed away, the world didn't stop, but Emily did. For days, for weeks, she moved like someone whose soul had gone quiet. She had no partner, no income, no stability, and her boy still looked at her with eyes full of trust that she feared she no longer deserved. She sold the house. She sold the furniture. She sold everything except a small box of Daniel's belongings and a handful of Caleb's toys. When she was finally left with only a suitcase and a few $100s, she decided to leave their old town behind, hoping that somewhere else, maybe, life would give her a second chance. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to keep moving. The road was harder than she imagined. Buses were expensive. Food disappeared quickly. Nights spent in shelters and sometimes in hopeful conversations with strangers who promised help that never came. But through every hardship, Caleb held her hand, sometimes squeezing it as if he were the one protecting her. The night they walked into Robert's hotel, Emily had only $12 left. The cheapest room was $35. She tried to keep her voice steady when she asked if there were any seasonal discounts, weekly rates, anything. Robert, tired and frustrated from his own financial pressures, simply shook his head and told her the price was firm. She nodded, though her heartbeat was breaking inside her chest. She glanced down at Caleb. That was when the boy, with the gentleness of someone who had learned too young what sacrifice meant, told her not to worry. He said he could sleep on the floor so Mommy could rest, as though sleeping on cold tile was something he should ever accept. Emily didn't respond, but tears gathered at the edges of her eyes. She tried to hide them, but Robert saw everything. He felt the weight of the moment like a hand squeezing around his heart. He cleared his throat, guilt cracking through his earlier coldness. He had once been a father, too. He once knew what it meant to want to protect your family and fail. Years earlier, Robert had lost his own daughter in a severe winter illness. He and his wife had separated shortly after, both drowning silently in their grief, unable to hold each other up. He ran the hotel because it was all he had left. He learned to stay distant from people because caring hurt. But seeing that child try to comfort his mother broke through the wall he had built around his pain. Robert told them to wait for a moment, then walked into the back office. He stood there, alone, wrestling with his memory of a little girl who once tugged at his sleeve with a stuffed rabbit in hand. He remembered how he could not save her, and suddenly the idea of turning his back on another child, not because of fate but because of money, felt unbearable. He returned to the counter with a room key. He told Emily the room was available at no cost, just for the night, no questions asked. Emily looked at him with a shock so raw it was almost painful to witness. She tried to refuse, but her voice cracked into sobs she could no longer hold. She didn't cry loudly. She cried quietly, the way people do when they are used to swallowing pain. Robert felt tears burn behind his own eyes too, something he had stopped allowing himself to feel a long time ago. He led them to the room, making sure the heating was on, and told them to get some rest. Caleb looked up at him with a smile unbroken by the world, and that smile was enough to make Robert excuse himself quickly before he cried in front of them. The next morning, Robert prepared a simple breakfast for them: toast, scrambled eggs, and juice. Nothing grand, but to Emily and Caleb it felt like a feast. Emily had slept deeply for the first time in weeks, and there was a peaceful stillness in her eyes. Robert asked where they were heading next, and Emily confessed she didn't know. The small honesty was fragile, like glass in her hands. Robert made a decision before he could talk himself out of it. He offered her a job at the hotel doing laundry and cleaning rooms. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a chance, a place to stop running. In return, she and Caleb could stay in one of the small staff rooms, free of rent, until she got back on her feet. Emily covered her mouth, trying to hold back another wave of tears. Caleb hugged her waist, sensing something good was finally happening. Over the next weeks, the hotel began to change. Guests noticed how warm the environment felt, how the room seemed cared for with gentle hands. Emily worked diligently, grateful for every moment. Caleb helped Robert by arranging pamphlets or wiping tables, filling the hallways with a child's laughter that had been missing for far too long. Robert found himself healing too, slowly, quietly. Caleb reminded him of innocence, of hope, of the simple joy of being acknowledged. Sometimes, Emily would look at Robert and see the kind of sadness in his eyes that only someone who has grieved deeply could recognize. She didn't pry, but she was kind, and sometimes kindness is enough to begin mending someone's broken pieces. Months passed. Emily began saving money. She started taking small tailoring orders again, doing hems and repairs for nearby locals. Word spread that she was skilled, and soon she had more work than she could handle. The days were busy, but they were good. They were finally good. The bond between Emily, Caleb, and Robert deepened in a way none of them expected. They became a small, unconventional family, one built not by blood, but by shared pain and shared healing. The empty spaces in each of their lives slowly filled with warmth again. Caleb no longer needed to sleep on floors. Emily no longer cried herself to sleep. And Robert, for the first time in years, felt his heart beating for something more than survival. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more people who may need them. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Would you have helped Emily and Caleb if you were in Robert's place? And remember, kindness does not always change the world, but it always changes someone's world.